reading on online about um, the reports of the school children experiencing ancestral calling at school, and apparently this has prompted the Department of Education to call on submissions for people to submit abstracts on this ancestral calling at school. If there is a compelling submission, it would then mean that ancestral calling will be taught at school. So, seeing these plans of introducing teaching of ancestral calling into schools, what could have triggered this, Doc, and why are you opposing it?
Hello. First of all, thank you for having me on this program. And yes, there is a concern. In fact, I posted on my Facebook page quite a while ago, and the post was raising the concern because I saw this advertisement, and it's specifically coming from the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education. And the post or advert is really inviting, as you've said, abstracts, inviting people to give abstracts. And the background, let me tell you that the Department of Education, the background that they're giving for the call for this submission for abstracts, they are saying that some time ago there was a young lady who was studying to be a sangoma, and was now going to school in her sangoma attire, and that the school then forbade her from actually doing that. And it is said that she was suspended, and allegedly and apparently that she committed suicide. So they are giving that as the background. But I do want to say, for me, I don't see that. I don't connect the dots. I'm not able to connect the dots. And my concern is that there are certain infringements, constitutional rights. One of them is an infringement. But also my concern, is the way that the abstracts are being called for. They have actually specified 5 different themes that are to direct this abstract. So the way that they have framed these themes is in such a way that it's already telling you how to write the abstract. One of the things that they want people to comment on in this abstract is to comment on westernization and colonization, appropriation of African values. So in other words, it's already coming from a perspective that westernization is bad, and it's trying to set a foundation and a justification for bringing in ancestral calling, because they're representing ancestral calling as a representation of African values. So I have a problem with the way in which the themes have been formulated. They've been formulated in such a way as to already decide the outcome, that the outcome is that ancestral calling must be taught and rolled out in the schools.
For the benefit of those that may not know, Doc, what is the difference between a normal submission in support or opposing and an abstract?
Well, an abstract is essentially, it's a summary. What an abstract is, and those who've written master's degrees and PhD degrees will know that you write a whole thesis, and the thesis now justifies everything that you're saying. But in the thesis, there must be a summary that sets out what are the reasons, what is your topic on, and what is your outcome, and what are the summarized view, what is the support for the thesis that you are purporting. So that's really what an abstract is. And when you write a PhD, you are supposed to support your evidence, with a certain finding, to say, this is what I'm saying, this is my topic, this is my theme, and it's supported by this evidence. But when you ask and call for abstracts, and those abstracts already have such specific themes, which are already deciding the outcome, this is what I'm saying, that when you read those guidelines, what they call guiding themes Those guiding themes have already set a tone, and it's a tone to say this must be the outcome. And when you read those guiding themes, they're already stating that Western education is bad. It has appropriated our African value system, and therefore, as a result, we are now justifying this as a reason for bringing in ancestral calling, which represents African spirituality. So there are a number of problems I have with that. Number one, it is a very terrible assumption and presumption to say that ancestral calling represents African spirituality. Many of us are spiritual people. My great-grandparents were spiritual people. But it is erroneous to say that ancestral calling represents the spirituality of every African people. We've always believed in God, in one God. We've distinguished, in Setswana, we distinguish between God and Badimu, which are gods representing ancestral calling. So I think people out there who are saying that ancestral calling is the only representation of African spirituality, you are wrong. There are many Africans out there who are Christians, and Christianity for us does not separate us from our Africanness. So to try and disconnect faith on the basis of what is African, Christianity is a faith for everybody. It doesn't separate. It doesn't distinct. It doesn't distinguish other people. It is a faith for everybody. So people who are out there trying to represent it as a Western faith, it is erroneous. It is erroneous and it is misleading. It's a faith for everybody. The second thing, like I said, I have a problem in the way that the abstract has been presented. And now this is the very, very important thing I want to say, Ndade Keith, is I want to say this categorically. I have a great concern for the Department of Education and their value system and their agenda, overall agenda. And one of the concerns I have for us in the Christian faith, we believe that parents must be involved in the education of our children. Proverbs 22:6 gives the mandate to parents to teach, train, equip their children. But slowly, we are seeing the Department of Education taking away the mandate and the capacity of parents to teach, train, and equip their children. It started with comprehensive sexuality education, whereby they brought in fact, here is the irony and the hypocrisy of the Department of Education, Date Keith. They're saying they're resisting foreign education. What is more foreign than comprehensive sexuality education, which teaches our children to have sex out of marriage? What is more foreign than comprehensive sexuality education, which teaches children how to have anal sex? What is more foreign than comprehensive education, sexuality education, which teaches children that you have the right to choose your own gender? That is not unique to African values. So it is hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy to say we want to teach our children African values, but you have embraced comprehensive sexuality education and you are teaching our children things that are foreign to our African values. So you can see clearly there's an agenda here. Secondly, on the issue of spirituality, Bibles and prayer have been taken out of the school. And they've been taken out of the school on the basis that they represent spirituality and faith. And when the government started pushing for neutrality in the schools to say no Bibles, no prayer, they said that the schools are a place of learning and there's no room for faith to be embraced in the schools. So if that is the situation, if that is the case, why do they want to embrace ancestral calling? Ancestral worship, ancestral calling are issues of faith, are issues of spirituality. So you cannot reject one faith on the basis of it being a faith and embrace another spirituality and another faith. It is hypocrisy of the highest level. Hypocrisy of the highest level. So we really need to be careful around discrimination, because Section 9 of our Constitution prohibits discrimination. It is discriminatory practice. It is discrimination to kick out one faith and say schools are not a place of faith, they're not a place of spirituality, and then you bring in another spirituality. It is discriminatory. If you're going to kick out the Christian prayers and Bible reading in schools, then you must kick out ancestral calling as well. Section 15.
All right, you can go again. You can go ahead with that thought, Doc.
Yeah, I was going to say section 15 of our Constitution provides for freedom of belief, thought, opinion, and religion, which means we have a protected right as believers. So if the aspects of ancestral worship will be taught and children will be taught about ancestral calling in the schools, it takes away our Christian section 15 right, faith, our right to also, then we must also be allowed to teach our faith in those schools, and we must not have foreign spiritualities imposed on our children. So there are constitutional issues that must be looked at here. And there's a level of hypocrisy that has to be examined here. You know, the basic minister of basic education, Me Angie Motseka, is the minister of education. And we know, without a doubt, it's not a secret that her husband, Dr. Matole Motseka, is actually a strong proponent of African spirituality. He's got a school, he's got an institute called Kara Institute, which teaches such principles. So I think it is, for me, it is actually in error. I would actually go as far to propose and suggest that it would be an abuse of authority for any leader, national leader, to take their personal beliefs that they believe, their household beliefs, and find an opportunity. Use your government office to find an opportunity to roll out your personal beliefs or your husband's personal beliefs. I would say that is serious abuse of office.
Now, I just want us to go back before I come to this one, Doc. Let's go back to the abstract. Do you think it will be a once-off exercise after receiving those guided abstracts? Won't there be the normal consultation with the public to engage on the matter? Or do you believe that once they receive the abstracts, then they will implement the ancestral calling teaching into schools?
I believe they will implement. I believe that their agenda is already to implement. And I'm saying this as an active citizen, a lawyer who has participated over the last 20 years in all these public submissions, where government has invited us to publicly submit, even with comprehensive sexuality education. They are not inviting you with an honest agenda. They're inviting you to tick the box to say that we've consulted, yet they've already made up their mind. As in the instance of comprehensive sexuality education, we made submissions, we raised our concerns. Those concerns were never raised. I was in the meeting in February 2020 at Protea Fire and Ice Hotel, where the government said they were consulting with the faith organization. To begin with, in Tate Keith, it was not the faith body. There were 100 people invited. Of those 100 people invited, the government made sure that 50 represented organizations that represented contrary views to the faith body organization. They brought in medical doctors who were sexologists, sex experts, who were there to promote promiscuity. So how will that be said to be good faith consultation when already you've diluted the faith body with people who have contrary views? The government had no intention of consulting. They were there to tell us. When I asked the Deputy Director General to say that these values that you're teaching on sexual values are contrary to our faith, can we as Christians remove our children from this? He said, no, it's not an option. I said, what is the option? He said, the option is to remove your child from the school, send them to private school. What kind of an option is that? So this is my reason for saying that the consultation is a fake consultation. It is done to tick the box to say that we adhered to the process, But the agenda is already made up. Why? And what made the agenda? Department of Education received 500 million rands from UNESCO on comprehensive sexuality education. That's really what sealed the deal. So what the public said to actually negate, to say we don't want this, the fact that they accepted the 500 million rand is what made them have to roll out comprehensive sexuality education. Because speaking as a lawyer, once you receive a reward, it's a contract. It's a contract. And you have to fulfill that contract, or else you risk being sued. So from the moment the government accepted, and this is on record, because the Minister of Education actually reported when the DA asked her a question in Parliament to say, did you receive any money for comprehensive sexuality education? They said yes, and she reported that they received 500 million rand. So how do you receive 500 million rand to roll out a program, and then you hold consultation afterwards? It shows that the consultation is in bad faith, and it was never intended. And it's the same for this program. People do not call for abstracts unless they intend to roll out that policy. So the abstract is merely to say, give us your recommendations, show us how to roll it out. It's not asking for should we roll out. It's actually to call an abstract is saying show us how to roll out. It's not saying should we. It's saying give us ideas on how to best roll this out. So it's not a call. Otherwise, they would have asked.
It sounds like
it sounds like a
one.
It's a done deal.
Decision.
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal.
It's a done deal, because they would have asked, if it was a question of consultation, they would have asked South Africans, what do you say about ancestral call? Should it be taught, etc., etc.? Now, when somebody gives you guided themes already, it means that we've already decided all we need from you is proposals from you on how to roll it out. So this is not a consultation. It's to say, give us a direction on how to roll this out.
Let's go on the ground, Doc. There is evidence that there are kids that commit suicide because of they are not taken care of at schools. What can then be done to mitigate that?
They're not taken care of in terms of what? In terms of food and what? What are you talking about?
Well, the part that you also mentioned earlier, that they go to school dressed in that attire of sangoma, and they are teased by others. In other schools, they are also teased by teachers, and they end up committing suicide. So what could then be done to mitigate that?
There are a number of options. There's options around counseling. There's options around teaching other children, just in terms to be respectful, just like we do for other things. Teach other people to be respectful, and teaching tolerance, because tolerance does not mean acceptance. Ndate Keith, you know, tolerance means don't bully others, don't be cruel to others. It doesn't mean that I have to accept your values. It doesn't mean that I have to accept your principles. But still, tolerance means I'm not bullying, I'm not mean to you, I'm not oppressive, and I'm not abusive. So one can teach tolerance of that. The fact that I don't believe in your values and views does not mean that I have to accept them. So tolerance and acceptance are distinguishable. Also, there's the option. There's the option of even, you know, if that, like I said, Ndate Matole Matsakha, he has his own institute where he teaches these principles of African spirituality. So there's an option to actually start your own schools where they can be accommodated. That aspect of what they want to learn can be accommodated in a different environment. Because like I said earlier on, it is hypocrisy for the government to reject one faith, reject one spirituality, but then they say we embrace another one. That's hypocrisy. So you cannot have double standards. You cannot say you're not allowed to pray. You mustn't cite scriptures. You, as Christian schools, you're not allowed to use the word Christian. But then with ancestral calling, say, no, but you can bring in ancestral calling. You can teach people that it's hypocrisy. It's double standard. It's contrary to the Constitution in terms of Section 9, which deals with equality and non-discrimination, and in terms of Section 15, which deals with freedom of religion issues.
The ACDP says this teaching should be left with parents, not teachers. Do you agree?
Yes.
The teaching of ancestral coding.
It should be left. Yes, I mean, on the same basis that they're saying schools should be institutes of learning. They must stick to that. They must be consistent to that. If they reject one faith and say that there must be schools of learning, then they must be consistent with that. I am saying that parents are fundamentally responsible for teaching, training, equipping their children. And that's according to our faith, Christian faith, in Proverbs 22:6. And I'm saying that, yes, parents can help their children if they want to go into that avenue of ancestral worship, whatever. I mean, that is a separate issue. So whether they want to have their own schools, which are already there in Tate Keith, those schools are already there. We know. Their schools are already there that teach children. They're calling. So why would you want to impose it on other people? Is it not an abuse, a violation of other people's constitutional rights? So the schools are already there. Why not send your children to that special school right there? So it's clearly an agenda to bring their own views and their own beliefs, just as they're claiming that Western people have imposed their beliefs. They're actually doing what they're accusing the Western, so-called Western nations of doing. They're trying to also impose their beliefs on others. So it's hypocrisy to say we are resisting imposition that's coming from foreign nations, and Western values have appropriated our culture. But now you want to impose. Now you want to impose your values on people who don't want them. It's hypocrisy. You cannot accuse the pot. The pot is calling the kettle black.
Yeah. The deadline is Wednesday, the 10th. And how do people object if there is no call for objections to this call for submission?
What I've been encouraging people to do is just to say, in spite of the fact that the call is for abstracts, we have freedom of speech in South Africa, and be active citizens. So there's an email address, that email address there that's calling for abstract. I've just been encouraging believers to be active citizens and say, just send emails of objection there, and object on two grounds. Object on the aspect that Christianity has been removed from schools and that it is inconsistent with what the Department of Education is doing, double standards. Object on the basis of double standards. Object on the basis of violation of your own Section 15 constitutional rights. So that's what I've been encouraging people to do. Even though they haven't called for it, object, and let the people know that there are people who are out there watching them and who are offended. It's a start. In the second arena, I have the privilege of sitting on the 4SA board, Freedom of Religion South Africa board. So we are also working on an official response, and I'm also in negotiation and discussion with Reverend Kenneth Mishra of ACDP. So we're working on an official response in this regard as well.
All right. You've mentioned this email. Do we have it so that we can also flight it, Doug?
Mzizi.si. I'm sorry, not Mzizi. Mzizi. MZIZI.si@gmail.com. And then you address it to Dr. Siabonga Dlamini.
I'm just concerned about a Gmail account. If this is a drive by the Department of Education, why would they use a Gmail account?
Well, I mean, I can't actually. I mean, somebody asked me that. I don't know why, but we have verified that this is actually an official email. So I can't explain. I don't know whether the department, because a lot of times, here's the thing that I also know is that many times when we make submissions to the government emails, they don't have capacity and they crash. So I don't know whether they've now recommending this Gmail, because the government emails tend to crash when there's a lot of traffic. So I don't know if I can't explain that, but like I say, we have verified the authenticity of this.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the Gmail there to Dr. Siabonga Dlamini.
Yeah, I think we've concluded it, Doc. I can see we've got load shedding on this end, but
Okay.
we have covered it. Thank you so much.